Greetings, magical mages and spiritual sages. This is the Age of the Mage podcast, and we're on episode 45. This is a fun one because we're going to go just really briefly through all the upcoming magical archetypes that we'll be covering. And as I have said in some previous podcasts, we're kind of putting together our own magical persona. So some of these things you can trace right down to, 3D physical characteristics, but others are going to really require more imaginative work. Just letting yourself let go and use your imagination, and the ideas that come to you, they mean more than we might think at first, because the imagination is a link to other realms, and it's just kind of cloaked in this world because we've been taught, unfortunately, not to value it enough and to compartmentalize our imagination and stuff those parts of us away from the real world, when in actuality, it's entirely likely that our imagination is the first place inspiration lands. It may be the very first contact area with other realms and other dimensions. And so when we've spent a lifetime ignoring that or boxing it into its own little spot and not incorporating our imagination into our world, we may be missing out on a great deal. And so as we proceed with the magical persona and building this out and having some fun with it, we'll come across things we need to do that can seem purely imaginative, but they're going to be valuable. So today we're going to just go over the upcoming idea of magical archetypes. We have introduced the 7 immortal soul lines. We've introduced the 6 spiritual overlays. And the archetypes might be a little easier to figure out because they have to do with functions, things that you may do rather than these pre-life types of feelings and things that you really have to stretch and allow your imagination to work with. These archetypes might be a little more available as they show up in even our everyday lives, what we find ourselves doing. So for the time being, I have chosen 9 main magical archetypes. But within each one of these archetypes is going to be 3 specializations, so 3 ways that magic can be used underneath the overall style of magic. And so I'm going to go through them pretty quickly here and just name them. And then I'm going to go back and highlight a couple of them just to give you an idea of where we're going to be heading with this exercise and help you start thinking about, what am I, or what do I like to do, and how would I like to fit in here? So so let's name the 9 first. So I have the warrior, the healer, the guardian, the sage, the commander, the oracle, the keeper, the builder, and the weaver. All right, so the warrior, I think we can all understand basic ideas inside the warrior. The warrior is a fighter, and in our case is most likely to fight for causes that would be helpful if, would fight back negative energies and things like that and protect others too. The healer, that's pretty self-explanatory, but there are different ways to heal and different types of healing, of course, many, just infinite number of ways. But when I get to describing the 3 subdivisions of each of these, they're perhaps better described as the focus. We'll play around with some words and see what feels best to all of us. The guardian, that's the protector, of course. And as you all know who have been following the podcast, I had specific instructions to share some ideas just for guardians and protectors recently. So that's been an adventure and a fun bit of information to be reporting on. The sage is a bit of a scholar, I would say. There's quite a bit of sensitivity there. The commander. So the commander is usually someone that likes to be in the lead, but not just likes to be, but does well, is really good at helping others move forward on projects. And there's a real talent to being the type of leader that others can respect and want to follow and so this is a more complex type of leadership than at first glance. The next one, the oracle. The oracle is akin to the messengers in the soul lines. In other words, they might get messages from other realms. They are familiar with forms of divination, and some can tell the future, and others are more gifted at current telepathic readings, things like that. The keeper, the keepers, oh, we all rely on keepers so very much, and yet sometimes they are in the background until we need them. And so this is going to be fun to explore because I have one of the areas inside the keepers as the collectors and one as the archivists. And we turn to them much like we would a resource center or a reference book or a library. And they really do a beautiful job of storing valuable items for us, not just items, but even, instructions and texts and grimoires, things we need to know. And they add their own kind of magic as they do that. The next one is the builder, and this is the kind of the creative energy, I would say. And they love projects. They like to build things, create things, make things. And they could fall into varying categories like an overseer or a designer or an engineer. These types of magic occur within the realms of the builder. And finally, we have the weaver. And one of the types of magic inside the weaver's realm is the nexus magic. So the weaver is a very special type of magic we're seeing become very important in our world right now because some of them are highly attuned to virtual webs and virtual networks. And then you have the etheric weavers who deal strictly with etheric grids and bringing these together. So all these 9 have very special functions. And if you review them and you think about them a little bit, you will most likely find yourself gravitating towards 1 or 2 or possibly 3. We don't all like to do the same thing all the time, do we? So if we were working in a group, and that group needed to solve a problem in a certain area. It might require a warrior, it might require a guardian, it might require a healer, and it might require a builder, for example. And so if you really resonate to warrior activities, you could certainly be in that team and do your work as the warrior for the team. But let's say you come up and you really enjoy working with 2 or 3 people that you trust and you've formed some magical affinity with, and there's someone else in that group that wants to be the warrior, then you might fall back on your next most often used archetype. So let's say that after the warrior, you tend to be a guardian. So you might say, sure, you be the warrior, I'll take the guardian spot. No problem. So very often we overlap with 1 or 2 or 3 of these archetypes, but we do find ourselves, as I say, kind of preferring 1 or 2 over the others. And we can even see some of these archetypes reflected in our everyday life. Warriors might be a little more feisty and ready to take on situations that need to be corrected in a very active way. Healers very often find themselves already healing, whether it's emotional healing or whether it's distance healing or energetic, whether it's physical healing. Sometimes you will find healers serving as nurses or serving as energy medicine practitioners, because their magic is overlapping so graciously with their real world abilities. So sometimes we are going to be able, as we assess and we work through these archetypes and decide where we fall and what our strengths and weaknesses may be and what we prefer to do, I think we'll see some overlap with activities that we actually do in and partake in our physical world. So I'm excited to announce that we're going to start working with these archetypes, and we'll just kind of put them in to the podcasts from here on out, and they won't necessarily be one right after the other. I want to be able to prepare some PDF pages for you that you can print out that will help you take notes as we go through these. And also in the future, I will have some nice journal pages too that you'll be able to have access to, that you can just print out and fill in as you determine different things about your magical persona, including the soul lines, including spiritual overlays, and of course these archetypes. So all that is going to be coming your way too, and I will certainly post as soon as those are available so you can get access to those. All right, so that is all we're going to discuss. This is a short one today, but just be think about what these archetype names mean to you, and start feeling it out, start getting a sense, if I were going to use magic, how do I most often, what's my energy behind it? What do I most often want to accomplish when I'm working magic or spiritual work? If you find that you connect with other beings, what do you find yourself doing most often? Are you trying to protect someone? Are you reaching out to heal someone? Are you looking into the future? Do people ask you for psychic readings? Do you like to build, create, and organize things? These questions that you naturally like to do in your everyday life are going to come in here as we decide what kind of archetypes you are and what you like most to work with. So let me repeat them one more time just to leave them with you and help you hear them and be thinking about them. It'll be a fun adventure we're all going to take together to identify some of these in ourselves. All right, one more time through the 9 main magical archetypes. We have the warrior, the healer, the guardian, the sage, the commander, the oracle, the keeper, the builder, and the weaver. All right, I will leave you with those to consider for now. I will be back soon. I wish you all the very best, and I'll say goodbye for now.